Pfizer vaccine is approved for 12 to 15-year-olds. Could the next stage of the jabs be on the horizon? UK regulators called it safe and effective. If teenagers are added to the vaccination programme, they could get it as early as the autumn.
We have enough supply to be able to vaccinate children, should that be the clinically advised thing to do.
Also tonight, Jet2's boss tells us their planes will be grounded for longer if more holiday destinations aren't given the green light. As British tourists in Portugal decide between more time on the sun lounger or quarantine. And the very British trend that was born out of lockdown boredom, yarn bombing.
I've not done many more bizarre things than this, frankly.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. Children as young as 12 across the UK could soon be offered a COVID jab. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has been ruled safe and effective for use in children aged between 12 and 15, with the benefits said to outweigh any risk. The UK's medicines regulator says it carried out what it calls a rigorous review of clinical data before reaching its decision. On the same day as the ruling, the latest official figures revealed that there were 6,238 new coronavirus cases across the UK today, the highest single-day rise since March 25th. More from our political correspondent, Daniel Hewitt.
You did it!
Children as young as 12 have been among the millions of Americans getting the COVID jab for almost a month now. In Canada, they've been doing the same, and today the UK took a step in the same direction. Our medicines regulator, the MHRA, approving the use of the Pfizer jab for children aged between 12 and 15. The benefits, it says, outweigh the risks.
You could be getting your vaccine.
News welcomed by Katie Steele in Glasgow. The 14-year-old has cerebral palsy and has been shielding for well over a year.
As a mum, I just felt she's going to have some protection. You know, somebody's listening. I just couldn't wait to kind of tell Katie. I just want to get it and get back out there. So it really means a lot.
But if and when Katie and millions of other children over 12 will get a vaccine has not yet been decided. Today, the Health Secretary said that would be down to the UK Vaccines Committee, the JCVI.
We have enough supply to be able to vaccinate children, should that be the clinically advised thing to do. We now have a vaccine that's approved for the use of children aged 12 and over, but I want to make sure this is all done on a clinically based, following the clinical advice.
The approval of the vaccine by the MHRA follows a study involving more than 2,000 teenagers in the US, which showed the jab to be safe and effective in 12 to 15-year-olds. In the vaccinated group, no cases of the virus were found from 7 days after the second dose, compared with 16 cases in the placebo group. And crucially, no new side effects were identified, with the data suggesting similar levels of safety as seen in young adults. The risk of children becoming ill with COVID is extremely low, and this scientist who advises the government on vaccinations suggests the main benefit for over 12s will not be medical.
The direct benefit to a 12-year-old receiving the vaccine is minimal. So you can vaccinate, and we do this for flu, to try and prevent transmission of infection to adults, although there is benefit for the children as well. If they are vaccinated and that prevents school closures due to COVID outbreaks, etc.
In Oxford this afternoon, parents and children alike didn't need convincing.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather not die from COVID.
But so long as all the clinical evidence is there, yeah, I'll be happy to give them the vaccine.
I'm totally fine, and I think my sons are happy to do it too. Yeah.
It's fine. And with cases of coronavirus climbing again, slowing the spread could mean speeding up the rollout to reach as many as possible.
And Daniel, that's the key, isn't it? It's about slowing down that spread, because we have got a backdrop of rising cases.
That's right, Charlene. As you mentioned earlier, we exceeded 6,000 cases today in the UK for the first time since March. Data from the Office for National Statistics, the ONS, suggests that the infection rate has doubled in a week in England, all driven, of course, by the Delta variant, the variant that originated in India. And it's that kind of data the government right now is poring over, looking at every waking hour to decide what to do on June the 21st. If you've heard this phrase once this week, you've probably heard it 100 times. Right now, the government says it's just too early to say what is going to happen on June the 21st. What Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, did say today is that the key bit of data is the link between cases and hospitalisations. Yes, we know that cases, he said, were going to go up. It was inevitable when we started lifting restrictions. But is that are those converting into hospitalisations? Are people going into hospital and putting pressure on the NHS? Now, right now, we know that 2 doses of the vaccine does break that chain between cases and hospitalisations. The problem is by June 21st, not everyone will have had their 2 doses. So the question is, has that chain been broken enough between cases and hospitalisations? Right now, as the government keeps saying, it is just too early to say.
Indeed. Daniel, thanks very much. Well, despite the rising cases, Wales is scheduled to begin easing more COVID restrictions from Monday. Groups of up to 30 people will be allowed to gather outdoors, while up to 3 households will be able to meet inside. Large organised events such as concerts and football matches will resume for up to 10,000 seated spectators. Well, ITV Wales correspondent Carol Green joins us from a vaccination centre in Llandudno. Carol, big changes coming from next week.
Yes, Charlene, there are big changes coming, but they're coming much more slowly than we anticipated. The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has put the brakes on the unlocking and moving to alert level 1. And why? Well, here in Llandudno, a tourist town, there's a race on between the Delta variant and the vaccine. Who will reach those people who haven't had their jabs first? And of course, it's all about staying ahead of that variant. And here they are surge testing, pop-up testing, so they can locate it and isolate it quickly. And there's been an open call here today for 18 to 39-year-olds who haven't had that first jab to come forward, and there's been a steady trickle all day. Now, Mark Drakeford, the First Minister, has always had this cautious approach to unlocking, erring on the side of taking things slowly, and it's an approach that has gone down well in Wales. He's largely been supported in that. But towns like this one, Llandudno, which is so reliant on tourists, the last thing they want is a lost summer like last year. And tourists, as they come here, they're being asked by Public Health Wales to test before they come. So we just try and keep on top of that Delta variant. But there is room for hope. They are vaccinating at pace here to keep one step ahead.
Carol, thank you. Well, this year's summer break is tonight threatened by chaos, with thousands of holidaymakers unable to travel abroad, yet also facing a booked-up Britain. Jet2, Britain's second largest tour operator, has said it could keep its fleet grounded for longer unless more countries go on the so-called green list. But as our consumer editor Chris Troy has discovered, finding a UK-based alternative is no longer so easy either.
A plane returning from Portugal tonight. Airlines announced extra flights as many tourists aim to beat quarantine, while at home many with bookings to Portugal are left bemused.
Obviously I can't go if you've got a quarantine, so really I can't afford to do that. And it's frustrating, so I don't know what happens next. Will I be able to rebook or get my money back?
It's peak time really, isn't it? Yeah.
This travel agency worked into the night dealing with the fallout. And tonight, Britain's second largest tour operator told us it could keep its fleet grounded longer unless more countries go onto the green list.
If there's no destinations on green, it's going to be very difficult to justify a flying operation because, let's face it, not everyone can afford the cost of testing and not everyone can afford to have 10 days in quarantine.
To all the places you've dreamed about.
With dreams of foreign trips badly dented, the UK bookings boom has accelerated. Now accommodation and attractions are filling fast. Even Buckingham Palace, where tickets for stateroom tours have all gone. With no major overseas destination now available without quarantine, today the rush towards domestic holidays moved up a gear. And despite the unpredictable weather, that's led to the prospect of fully booked Britain. New figures given to ITV News today show hotels for a family of 4 in Padstow, Cornwall, already 99% fully booked for August. In Brighton, 82% full. It's 88% in the Peak District. And the average nightly rate across 12 UK hotspots is now £361.
The whole thing about a country going green and then going back to amber definitely seems to have been a move now to say, let's book into the UK. We'll have to leave abroad till next year or later in the year. But that switch going from green to amber has really rattled people.
While Cornwall was today preparing for fuller beaches, those in overseas tourism fear for the future. They hoped things would be brighter. Instead, things just got more amber. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Meanwhile, as a result of the government's decision to demote Portugal to the amber list, some British holidaymakers are pitched into an expensive scramble to get home. They're forking out hundreds of pounds in airfares to get back before new quarantine rules come into force, while others have chosen more time on the Sun Lounger. Our Europe editor James Mates reports on the unfolding situation in Portugal.
For British tourists landing at Faro Airport in the Algarve today, this will have felt like changing the rules in the middle of the game. A trip that had been booked expecting no quarantine, now, without warning, involving 10 days isolation on return and no chance of a refund. This group from Portsmouth had no option but to buy expensive new tickets home to beat next week's deadline.
Can get our money back. What we've done is we've changed it, so we were meant to do 5 nights, but we've done 3 nights now, so we can come back while Portugal's still in the green list.
Were the flights more expensive?
Yeah, a lot more expensive. Yeah, so we come from Portsmouth in the south of England, and the cheapest flight we could get home was to Wales in Cardiff.
But the awful realisation for the rest of us is that just like last summer, this summer too may be plagued by constant changes in the regulations, with no ability to book anything with confidence. Many have pressed ahead, but talking to the drivers running airport transfers, there have also been dozens of cancellations.
Today I had around 15, and for today I had 5 cancellations. So, and tomorrow every time I looked on the phone, I'm waiting for some cancellations.
For those already here and on the beach, it's a matter of accepting quarantine or hurrying home. British Airways putting on extra flights and offering holidaymakers the chance to get home early at no extra cost. The Portuguese don't believe the figures justify the UK decision.
We are testing the British that while they are staying here since 17 May, and we haven't had positive cases so far in the number that is significant. So there are no statistics, facts that result on this decision.
It was just a few short weeks ago that I was at Harry's Bar in Covilheiro, hearing their excitement the tourists were back. Today, it's despair.
Everybody in the town has brought in businesses that of new people to work, put in money, and now it's been dissolved in one fell swoop. We are devastated.
For both tourists and businesses alike, an on-again, off-again summer may be even worse than no summer at all. James Mates, ITV News.
Well, our consumer editor Chris Choi has joined us in the studio, and you've had more reaction from the travel industry about all of this.
Yeah, look, just when you thought that relations between the travel industry and the government couldn't get any worse, they've taken a new twist tonight. An open letter from UK Airlines seeking some urgent answers. They are asking, why was Portugal not placed on a green watch list? What are the full criteria and thresholds that determine a country's tier allocation into green, amber or red? And they want to know why it is that fully vaccinated customers are still being subject to the same levels of restrictions as non-vaccinated arrivals into the UK. And that actually taps into quite a groundswell of opinion. People saying, what happened to the so-called vaccination dividend? Shouldn't there be more freedoms now going along with the vaccination rate that we now have? all eyes now on the government's next response to that, and also on June the 24th, their next review into these travel regulations, with the industry hoping more will go onto that green list.
OK, Chris, thanks very much for that. Well, if you've got any questions about the latest changes to the travel list and what they mean for you, there's lots more information over on our website. Just go to itv.com/holiday news. But still to come on the ITV Evening News. The toppled statue of slave trader Edward Colston on display, but what should happen to it? And why some postboxes have had a mystery makeover. But first, it's been revealed today that 2 police forces have agreed to pay damages to more than 600 people over a cover-up following the Hillsborough disaster. The civil claim was settled even though no one has been convicted in a criminal court of covering up what happened. The South Yorkshire and West Midlands forces agreed the settlement earlier this year. Stacey Foster reports from Liverpool.
When 96 people died at a football match in 1989, no one could have predicted the long battle for justice. 3 decades after the Hillsborough disaster, South Yorkshire Police and West Midlands Police are to pay damages to the victims in what lawyers called one of the largest and most shameful cover-ups by a police force.
If an apology had been made the day after the disaster, then I think that there would have been a lot more forgiveness. But to put the families through what they've put us through for the past 33 years is a disgrace.
The settlements were announced after 2 former police officers and a solicitor were cleared of altering statements to minimise the police blame. The judge ruled there was no case to answer, another disappointment for the families desperate for someone to take responsibility for Hillsborough.
This does represent some small measure of justice for the long, tortuous fight that they've had over all of these years since Hillsborough happened. But it doesn't bring accountability.
New inquests in 2016 found that the 96 men, women and children who died were unlawfully killed and that fans played no part in the cause of the disaster.
Nobody has ever been convicted over how police dealt with what happened at Hillsborough, both on the day or in the subsequent investigations. 601 people will now receive compensation, but South Yorkshire Police acknowledges that money can never make up for what the families of the 96 people who lost their lives have suffered over the past 32 years.
And many families remain angry that no one has taken personal responsibility for the death of their loved ones. Stacey Foster, ITV News, Liverpool.
Facebook announced today that the account of former President Donald Trump is being suspended for 2 years. He won't be able to post on any of the company's social media platforms until at least the end of the first week of January 2023, when Facebook will review the ban. He's been blocked indefinitely in the wake of the deadly violence at the Capitol insurrection on January the 6th this year. And a pair of drug dealers have been jailed after they were stopped while undertaking a police car in a traffic queue on the M6 motorway. Cocaine with a street value of £500,000 was found in a rucksack from the car. Simon Paget and Dean Stone, both from Walsall, were jailed for a total of 13 years. Almost exactly a year after it was thrown into the waters of Bristol Harbour, the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston went back on public display today. Having been pulled down by Black Lives Matter protesters, it's been placed on its back with graffiti still on it alongside the demonstrators' placards. Organisers say it's to help people discuss the statue and its wider history. From Bristol, Sejal Karia reports.
Edward Colston's statue that once stood on a plinth in the centre of Bristol will from today be viewed like this at the city's Shed Museum, lying horizontally, scratched and graffitied just as it was when it was dredged from the riverbed in Bristol Harbour. It's gone on temporary display together with the placards of the Black Lives Matter protesters that brought it down.
This display isn't trying to celebrate Colston or to try to commiserate the statue coming down. But as a museum and a museum of Bristol, which the Shed is, you know, there is responsibility to tell different parts of what's happened in the history and to try to put those moments in context.
Demonstrators pulled down the statue of the 17th century slave trader last June, before it was thrown in Bristol Harbour and later recovered by the council, exposing deep divisions over the fate of such monuments and reopening a painful reckoning for Bristol of its history and heritage. Edward Colston's statue had stood here for 126 years, but it took just seconds for it to be toppled to the ground. The question now is, what happens to it long term? Does it stay on display or does it get hidden away? That decision now lies in the hands of the people of Bristol.
For me, I really don't care either way what happens with Colston, but I think if he is going to remain at the M Shed, then the full story should be told as to who he is and why he's there.
I think it was sad when the statue came down. I think it's terrible lying in there like that.
Personally, I would like to see it back there with a description of who he was and what he did, whether it was good or bad, because it's part of Bristol's history.
So questions still remain over whether the statue should be permanently displayed, where and how. The controversy of Colston's monument is far from over. Sejal Karia, ITV News, Bristol.
Frankie Dettori won the Oaks at Epsom today, one of the flat racing season's traditional classics.
She's pulling clear, Snowball by 8 lengths from Mystery Angel Divinely.
He piloted his Mount Snowfall on a rain-soaked Epsom track to the biggest victory margin ever recorded in the race, which involves only the top fillies or female horses. Holly Doyle, who was trying to become the first ever woman jockey to win a flat racing classic, finished down the field. Finally, in years to come, we'll probably still be asking each other what we got up to during lockdown. Aside from the baking and the box sets, there's been an army of knitters taking part in what's affectionately known as yarn bombing. They've been creating decorative cosies for post boxes and poles, covering hundreds right across the country. And for them, it's been a key part of coping with lockdown. Sangeeta Lal reports.
They've popped up on post boxes all over the country. Homemade handiwork that brightened those long days of lockdown. An unusual hobby Jane says she never knew she needed.
It's really bizarre. I've not done many more bizarre things than this, frankly. This one is to go outside a children's charity, so I wanted something that children could relate to. It's just a nice thing to have memories of the beach, even if you're not going there.
And even on a day like today, how much have you seen it help people?
I've really loved, the community spirit that we've had locally, just making all of these just really quite incredible things. There's such creativity out there.
And the so-called yarn bombing is catching on. From Lancashire to London, Somerset to Sussex, these carefully crafted postbox toppers just can't be ignored.
It's really fun and it makes me really happy.
What about it makes you so happy?
All the animals are smiling and it brings joy.
A joy that will now never be forgotten. After noticing them on a run one morning, this author decided to write a book capturing the lockdown letterboxes.
We uncovered mystery, intrigue and crime. Some postbox toppers were nicked and found in another area. There's anonymous knitters who didn't want people who know who they are and do it under the cover of darkness.
So much drama in these yarn bombs.
It's amazing. There's scandals, there's drama, there's intrigue. It's a world of its own.
Yeah, I might do a message Just wonderful. And one Belinda now wants to share with this new knitting community that pulled together through a pandemic. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
I think I want to join in. OK, that's all for now. Tom's here at the slightly later time of 10:30 tonight. But for me and the whole of the team, have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.